Live on YouTube, folks. Chris Saxman here, Virginia Free. More bad news for Democrats. Saw the poll that came out at Monmouth. What was the problem there? It wasn't necessarily that it was a tie. That's not obviously the direction that Democrats want to be going in. They were hoping to be a much larger advantage by now. But once you get inside the crosstabs, live on YouTube, folks. Chris Saxman here, Virginia Free. Solved that one. More bad news for Democrats. There we go. Sorry about that, folks. Poll that came out at Monmouth. What was the problem there? Closing out YouTube. There we go. Sorry, folks. Nothing like the home office, right? Anyway, thanks for joining. It's great to have you here. The Monmouth poll was bad for a number of reasons. A, it continued the downward trend or the closing of the gap between Youngkin and McAuliffe. It's the Real Clear Politics average is now 1.8 for McAuliffe. Internal polls from Youngkin and other Republicans suggest it's closer than that, if not to the advantage of Youngkin. But once you look inside those polling numbers, you see where independents are going. In the Quinnipiac poll as well. Quinnipiac poll, I think, in this one line up that independents are at 20, Biden's at 28 with independents. That's a disaster. That's an absolute disaster. Let me get this view going here. So you can imagine what you do in this situation when you're losing independents as badly as McAuliffe is. What do you do? And I'll throw that out to the class, but the reality is you do what you're supposed to do, is get people actually going to show up for you, and that's not independent. So that's why he's going hard after the base right now. The base of the Democratic Party is where he's going. You see his most recent events. He's going to Charlottesville. He's bringing out, this is McAuliffe, bringing out Dave Matthews, Stacey Abrams, and Jamie Harrison. Obviously, that's a reaction to the fact that the Democrats need their primary base to show up, and that's what they relied on in the past to get them over the top. Young, progressive African Americans, and that's who they're bringing out, and that's who they're trying to get to. So it's not rocket science. It's obvious what they're trying to do, and if you're a Democrat, they're just basically saying, in essence, we're not going to be going for the swing independent votes anymore. They're just not there. We have to go to our base in order to win this. And if they get them to show up and they get some lower propensity Democratic voters in there within their base to show up, they'll win. Republicans, on the other hand, have a really good advantage from where they have been in the past. They're better than they have been. They're in a much better position than they have been. Youngkin has a lot of money, but he has to get those low propensity voters to show up as well. And that's really the game inside the game. Who's going to get the final numbers to push them over the top? Down ballot, it's still looking much, much better for the Republicans. I hear varying things, very rumors. Unless I have a polling number, it's objective and publicly available. I really can't get into too many of those things. It's just so speculative, and you don't want to be accused of being partisan, especially because I was in a partisan position. This is a nonpartisan role I have at Virginia Free. So we definitely have to stay, above board in that regard. But all of the things I'm hearing are just negative for the Democrats. They're just consistently negative across the board. Races that should be out of reach for Republican and for Democrats, they aren't. They're in play. They're spending a lot of money in battlegrounds. And I told you all on Tuesday, when Jill Biden went to Eastern Henrico County, that's a problem. Why? Because that's a Democratic area. Stacey Abrams went to Norfolk. That's a problem because that's a Democratic area. They should have those locked down. When Norfolk is about 75, 80% Democrat, and you're having turnout rallies at this stage of the game in 80% districts, that's a problem. When you go to Charlottesville, think about Charlottesville. This is not a toss-up area. This is a hard Democratic city. You need college kids, you need African Americans to show up. That's the goal there by having these rallies there. It is what it is. And the fact of the matter is, the other night that Glenn Youngkin had a rally in Burke, drew over 1,000 people inside the facility and had to go outside to speak to the people who couldn't get inside. These are just the dynamics on the ground. And even the Jill Biden event in Henrico, if you saw that, it was less than 100 people. It was in eastern Henrico County, which was not where you needed to be. The Jill Biden's remarks were disrupted by anti-fossil fuel protesters, and she had to stop her remarks. It's just not looking good for the Democrats right now. This trend is bad. Let's just put it that way. The trend is bad. And if you looked at the email I sent out, it's largely driven by the fact that Joe Biden's pulling down the entire team. When I just finished the Bob Woodward book, Peril. It's a good book written by Woodward and also Robert Costa. It talks the sort of the juxtaposition of the Trump end of the Trump campaign and leading into the January 6th issues there, the insurrection, the whatever you want to term that, what's now being investigated by the Congressional Commission and the Biden administration. And it really brought back to me what Joe Biden ran on, which was not this. Joe Biden ran on restoring the soul of democracy, restoring the soul of the nation. He said he was instigated by Charlottesville in 2017 to get in the race and, to turn the tide back for democracy. All those, I'm not going to cast aspersions on him, but it's not what he's doing right now. And it was driven by the fact that after the Republicans lost those 2 Senate races in Georgia, they thought they could get a lot more than they campaigned on. And I think that's a classic mistake in politics. Campaigning on what you're going to, governing on how you're going to campaign or vice versa is so important, because when you don't do it, it erodes trust. You didn't say you were going to do this, and the Democrats, I think, are suffering under that. Joe Biden's numbers just recently didn't come down. This has been a trend since March. And it's pulling down the vote here in Virginia for the Democrats. The engagement, the voter enthusiasm peaked back in September for the Democrats, according to the Monmouth poll, and has gone down steadily since. And that's what the Democrats are trying to stem that with their ads. They're trying to drive up the negatives for Youngkin. If you look at the overall impressions, the favorable, unfavorable ratings, Glenn Youngkin's plus 12, fave to unfave, and Terry is 39-39, net zero. So Youngkin's got a plus 12 advantage on unfave over McAuliffe. And that's a powerful marker in the game at this stage of the race, especially when the issues that are at top of mind for voters right now at the election are not what the Democrats thought they would be back in the middle of September and at the end of the summer and going into September, when we all know that's when voting started. But that's also when Terry McAuliffe made his viral moment at the debate, at the Northern Virginia Chamber debate. So it all coincided. It was like, I want to call it perfect storming, but you get pretty close to that, because it's hard to turn this momentum this quickly, because things are definitely trending to Republicans. That doesn't mean the statewide tickets are going to win for Republicans, although they stand a much better chance than they have in many recent elections. You also have to recognize that polls could be wrong. 4 years ago, I had numerous Republican lawmakers, incumbents, tell me they were going to win by 10 points 2 weeks out. Oh, we're up by 10. Oh, we're up by 10. They all lost by 10. Getting the actual electorate polled correctly is much more difficult in gubernatorial elections and non-federal elections, because the turnout is going to be so much less than as a presidential. Presidential in Virginia runs about low 70s to mid 70 in 2020. Now you're looking at about 50-51, which is still dramatically higher from where it was in 2009 when Bob McDonnell won, and when a 40% turnout. So it's almost 20% higher on as a percentage. And that's a lot. We're talking about over 3 million, 3.1, 3.2 million voters this year. The problem for Democrats and Republicans is trying to find which one of those voters are actually going to show up and who has already shown up. And with with independents splitting almost 2-1 for Glenn Youngkin, those late undecided voters is the catch, is the prize right now, and they're breaking towards Youngkin. And in a close election like this, it's really going to matter. When I continue to be amazed by is the lack of coverage for the third-party candidate, Princess Blanding. It's a great political story, but no one's willing to tell it. because it's to the detriment of the Democrats. It's the unfortunate level of partisanship we see in our media is just staggering to me. That someone who decided to run for governor because her brother was shot and killed by police is polling around 2% with little to no money, and she could tip the balance of the election, but no one's covering it. And Terry McAuliffe was challenged for his primary nomination by people from the left, challenging him on racial justice issues, social justice issues, police issues. I just don't see how that's not being covered more. Interestingly enough, in the Monmouth poll, if you look at the independent crosstabs, this is really fascinating to me. This is what election nerds do. Breaking down the crosstabs, independents on race relations break only +4 points for Terry McAuliffe over Glenn Youngkin, 26-30. Glenn Youngkin on COVID leads Terry McAuliffe, 32-30. Who do you trust more? That's not where Democrats thought they would be. Law enforcement, this is among independents and why independents are breaking heavily towards Youngkin. Law enforcement, 40-25 over Terry McAuliffe. Education in Virginia, folks. Imagine this one. Glenn Youngkin's beating Terry McAuliffe on education. Who do you trust more in education? Glenn Youngkin, 40-31. Abortion, 33-30. Taxes, 42-22. Are your views in line with Virginia? Independents say Glenn Youngkin is by margins 27-21. Biden is completely underwater in Virginia among independents. He's at 35 in Virginia. Joe Biden is underwater by 23 points. This is where the race is coming down to. Can both parties get their base out, and can they get any independents and swing voters to swing their way? Because they're swinging towards Youngkin, the Democrats have to go hard after their base in the last, 12 days. So that's a quick summation. I'd love to answer any questions you might have. You throw them in the chat box, or you can text me. I'm getting some texts here about some different races. I can't really comment on some of these because of the nature of the business. Let's just leave it there. But also, this is not just Virginia. New Jersey's race for governor has gotten a lot closer than it should be. Still think Governor Murphy polls out. He has a financial advantage over his opponent, but I've seen polling in the mid single digits, which is a disaster for New Jersey Democrats right now. And they might close it out, but I just don't think he has the money to do that with. So don't want to press on y'all too much. That's a quick overview. I see most of y'all are new, didn't come into the group the last time. Glad to have you back here. We'll do it again. We're looking at pretty much daily at 4 o'clock, unless I have a pressing appointment that I can't break. I'm going to try to do this at 4 o'clock every day until we get to the election, and then maybe a day or two after the election. But might have some exciting news coming out for you Virginia political nerds. Met with the Virginia Cable Television Association about doing a daily show in the General Assembly to cover all the issues and candidates and legislative activity down there. Let's see, got a message here regarding Biden. People vote with their wallets. Everyone is seeing rising costs across the board, which I think tends to favor Republicans. It tends to favor the party out of power. You got to blame someone, and the party in power, they take the credit, they take the blame. And that's just the way the ball rolls, especially on gas prices. I think I see that being posted all the time on social media. People are posting pictures about, gas station. They'll either point a picture to it, they're irate about it. It's showing up in other elements of costs. And then we're not even getting into the winter months yet when heating prices and electric prices might be going up as a result. So yeah, they're going to blame the Democrats because Democrats are in control, right? They're the single party in control in Washington, D.C. They're a single party in control in Richmond. That's just the way the political ball rolls. And there's just no way getting around it, right? If the economy takes off, you get the credit. If the economy goes in the tank, you get the credit. So what counties will you watch closely election day? Well, great question. the one locality that has been almost exactly right for every statewide election going back at least 12 years, maybe longer. I mean, within half a point either way. There's only one locality. And so you're going to see a lot of localities late because of early balloting and the dump they had in last time after hours. We think of after hours. Now it's not necessarily after hours, just when it is. Anyway, that locality is my hometown of Stanton. So if you see Stanton fully reporting, you can pretty much bet that that's the way the statewide is going to go. And Stanton usually reports early. Most smaller localities and rural areas report early. It's going to be hard to extrapolate out. Typically, you can call a race in Virginia early because the first batches that come in are, like I said, rural, small metro areas, and you can extrapolate out where it's going to lead. And it's not a guess at that point. But because of the amount of early balloting and mail-in balloting, it's much more difficult to tell. But look at Stanton early. That's my go-to. To be specific, if you want to get further down into the weeds, all you election nerds out there, Virginia Beach. If Glenn Youngkin gets over 55 in Virginia Beach, and I'm hearing internal polls suggest he has, that's a very good sign for the Youngkin campaign that they'll win statewide. Fairfax, which is going to report late. They always report late. They love reporting late. It's sort of like what they do. They want everyone paying attention to Northern Virginia, even though they have all the technology to report when they close the polls like everybody else does. They seem to have this deep desire to report late so everyone can go, oh, let's wait for Fairfax to come in. Okay, fine. Well, Youngkin's folks, I think, set a goal of hitting 41-2 in Fairfax. So if they're in the low 40s or high 30s, you can pretty much tell it's going to be a really close race. Anything above that is pretty much pointing to a victory for them. Mid 30s is a disaster. So those are the big ones. Chesterfield County, I don't know what their numbers are, but the battlegrounds had been Loudoun and Chesterfield. And I'm hearing good things to the Youngkin folks in Loudoun. I haven't heard anything in Chesterfield. Even the House races, I haven't heard too many specifics. Thoughts on Chris Hurst's chance versus Jason Ballard? That's House District 12 in Blacksburg, Montgomery County, Giles, Craig County. I think what else is out there? I think Floyd, maybe. I don't know if Floyd's in that district or not. Anyway, this is a Democrat. Hurst won that in 2019 by, I think, 8.2 points. And the first batch of polling I heard, Hurst and Ballard were tied. That's a disaster for Democrats. I've also seen early registration numbers for that district, and the Montgomery County area where Virginia Tech students turned out in great force in 17 and 19. That's down by 1,500 votes, 1,500 registrations, which is basically what Hurst won by. And then the other counties have seen a significant increase. So all points are pointing to an upset and a pickup there for Republicans, just on momentum. The national narrative, and then the momentum from registration and turnout. And also, you got to remember, those Virginia Tech students who voted, for or against Donald Trump in 2017 and 2019, they're no longer there, are they? Right? They cycle out. So that's part of the turnover that occurs in a lot of Democratic areas. There's a lot of movements. That's why the registration drives are so important for Democrats. They have to re-register people. And this is not all Democrats. This is just, on the margins when you consider all these things. And Republicans, for the most part, don't move around quite as much. So they don't have to continually get their registrations up and focus on that as much as Democrats do. If you want to throw a hand up, we can do that. Get any other text here. One new message, all right. Is there one main issue that would sink McAuliffe, education or inflation or vaccine mandate or whatever? Not at this point. Look, and I said this on Tuesday, and I got the same question Tuesday. As Americans, we don't want that kind of an event because it wouldn't be positive. There would be nothing positive about a dramatic event in the next 12 days to tip the election. There's not going to be a silver bullet issue, inflation. These are constant erosions within the base or constant support of the base issues, and they're trying everything they can to do that. And I think that's one of the smart things the Youngkin folks did was focus in on that cost of living and hit on the gas tax, the grocery tax cut. That was smart because everyone checks out at the grocery store almost every day, right? And so when people come home, they're bitching and complaining about the prices at the grocery store. You know, Glenn Youngkin says, I can solve at least a bit of that problem. And you know, that's what he was able to do. So he got on top of that narrative early. So an issue, not really, unless. But here's the problem. Even if it happened, how do you inject it to the point at which it becomes heard by enough people that it makes a difference? And that's why it would have to be so dramatic and so bad for the country that it would like stop everything, and everyone had to focus on it. And that's why when Terry had his gaffe at the debate, it happened at a time when it was absolutely the worst time. You get just after Afghanistan, people going back to school, they're in school, they're back to college, and he says what he said, and it went viral. And there's, like I said on Tuesday, there's only one rule you can't break in debates, and that's don't go viral. So he went viral, and Youngkin, it would have been political malpractice not to use that in the manner in which he's using it. He is pounding him over the head. That's why he's up 40-31 in education among independents. It's having an impact. Let's see here. Personal opinion, only thing that would really sink Youngkin would be Trump. Okay, I'm gonna take a step back. Who said that? I'm gonna agree with the person who wrote in there. If Trump shows up in Virginia to take credit for the victory, it could cost them. It could cost them the race. That's the only thing I think right now that would tip the balance of the election. So if he stays away, he's being smart. If not, and what's interesting about a guy like Trump, if he comes in and blows it for Youngkin, he'll still blame Youngkin. If he comes in and Youngkin still wins, he'll blame it. He'll take credit himself, right? That's just how narcissistic the guy is. Not that I'm saying we'd be bad politics. I'm just saying he's just that narcissistic. But it'd also be smart politics. How do you think Nick Clement will do? Nick Clement is everything. This is the House District 10 in Loudoun County, predominantly Loudoun County. Wendy Goditis is the incumbent. She won by about 4.5 points in 2019, and she is in deep kimchi, as they say. I think Nick Clement is one of the races Republicans think they're going to win, and I think they do. I think they picked up that seat. I think Nick's been a great candidate. He's been working hard, raising money on his own. A lot of enthusiasm, youth, vigor, the whole bit. He's not running on controversial social issues. He's running a good, smart race in Loudoun County. I think that one's going to go Republican. Did Monmouth poll ask the question? Yeah, they asked that in a variety of ways. You know, are you a registered voter, likely voter, and that it's always based on who you vote for today. You know, again, that shows how close it is if the people who polled actually do show up. Because of the enthusiasm gap, Monmouth called it a chasm. In the email I sent out, Monmouth said this is a chasm. The difference had been, let me read the paragraph there, because the metric that they showed before was GOP plus 13 on enthusiasm gap, and it went up by 10. It went up 10 points for each, but it's maintained that gap at 13. Then it dropped back off for Democrats from 31 to 26, but continued to go up for Republicans. So that was the chasm difference, when it continued to go up for Republicans and went down for Democrats after September in the polling. When an independent polling operation from an academic school uses a term like chasm, take it to the bank. That's a problem. What am I seeing in the LG and AG races? If I had to put money on it right now, I would say that Winsome Sears, out of the three Republican candidates, is more likely to have the highest level of percentage. Her vote total might not be the same or higher than Youngkin, but I think she'll have a higher percentage than Youngkin or Miyares at this point. And that's just from internal polling and word I can pick up on the street. and then Jason Miyares, and then Glenn. And I think in that order. But again, it's all being pulled in that direction by Glenn Youngkin because of the money he's spending. It's just that when you go down ballot, how many people stick around? And not everyone votes for every person on the ballot. Just an FYI there. I mean, they don't. It trails off. It's like in the presidential. You know, Tim Kaine and Mark Warner typically outpoll the president in the presidential races because they're better known in the state. That might be the reverse here, and you might get, you know, local delegates getting a higher percentage than Glenn Youngkin, which would support the polling that I'm hearing, that they are getting more support at the local level for Republicans than Glenn Youngkin. That's just a local dynamic. Hope that's answering y'all's questions. I do have to jump off here. I got to Zoom at 4:30. Any other questions, shoot me a text. Great to see everyone on the call here. We'll do it again tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Since it's Friday, don't be shy. You know, bring your early beverages, kick off the weekend, have some fun with it. It's just politics, folks. Great to see everybody. If you have any other questions,